Recording in progress.
Good morning, dear Dharma friends. It's 7 o'clock here on the west coast of the United States. On this little beautiful jewel of a planet, a dust speck in space, 100,000 light years from the center of its own galaxy, which is one among hundreds of billions. And each one of us is one of a kind ever. One of a kind ever, imagine that. So that was Kimberly Ransom, who often joins us here in the morning. Her song, Higher Ground. I've always been here, even when I wasn't here. I am that which calls itself Robert Beatty. And this is a broadcast of the Portland Insight Meditation Community, where we are practicing in the ancient tradition of the Buddha. I have a slightly longer reading I want to share with you this morning. I stumbled upon it, haven't read it in a long time. It was written by a woman named Jewel, and this was years before I had my craniotomy, before I knew. But she wrote this, and I think it's a marvelous teaching. I hadn't seen her in several years. It's an interesting thing when you've been teaching the same thing in a place like Portland for 40 years. People show up who haven't for 15 or 20 years, and it's always remarkable. So I invite you to let this flow through you. Robert, it's been a long time. The recent present has been a series of tightly compacted opportunities for practice, and on every step of the way, there's been gratitude for the Buddha's teachings for spiritual friends. There are no greater gifts than these Dharma teachings, and I thank you. Anatta, selflessness. In a nutshell, I had headaches on the left side of my head for a month that got worse every day, compounded by falling over, episodes of imbalance and dizziness. Looking at that pain, watching it change the feeling of everything, and really understanding it was not me was lesson 1. Sound and humor, August 3rd. The lesson 2 was my hour session in the MRI machine, where the sounds became a symphony of silliness, watching mind trying to piece together in this context and make sense of what I know about music and ambient sound, deeply listening to external and internal, trying to create meaning. This weird experience culminated in my shaking with laughter as 2 tones of honking reminded me of Harpo Marx, which of course raveled into numerous reminiscences of the Marx brothers. Anicca, impermanence, August 9. Meeting with the neurosurgeon. Diagnosis of a brain tumor a little larger than a golf ball sitting on the cerebellum, on or in a cerebral sinus, and draped over the tentorium. Dr. Rohner said, "You don't really have enough room for golf balls in your brain. This is a big one and needs to come out." My first thought was that this is really outside the flow I am used to calling my life. Sort of a how odd thought moved in and took residence. The second thought was how on earth I was going to soft pedal this with my daughter, who has been unable to discuss even advanced healthcare directives with me. I never for a second felt any sort of sorrow for myself or any wondering at why. I did think, oh my God, this practice works. I felt compassion for the people around me who started treating me differently, and my explanations of why I was in this particular mental space didn't sound right even to me. I never doubted that my intensified attention was appropriate. but talking about what I would not do. I never noticed this before, but talking about just staying in the present and attending to what's there is easily misinterpreted as denial. But that struck me as hilarious, which in turn made me look a little crazy. So I just shut up. Dukkha, suffering or unsatisfactoriness. August 25. Craniotomy is approached through the right lower edge of skull, right behind my ear. That took about 6.5 hours, 12 hours in the ICU. I thought I knew what pain was. At some point, a nurse leaned over me, touched my arm, and said, "Just breathe slow into the pain." And I awoke. Tears flowed in gratitude to her. I was in and out of consciousness, but each time I stayed awake a little longer and often remembered to be present and really look at the pain closely. It shifted and the intensity varied, it seemed, depending upon the level of consciousness I was at and my ability to focus in a greater or lesser manner. It surely did not feel personal at all. My daughter had taped a picture of prayer flags that are in my yard to the edge of my bed table, so I saw those when I opened my eyes, a good reminder. Friends showed up and reminded me that this too was impermanence. I have a reverse question mark shaped incision that starts an inch below my right ear, heads up and around the top of my head, feels like it's made of cardboard wrapped in plastic and covered with multiple layers of duct tape and soundproof insulation. There's no hearing in my right ear. Halo traction during surgery left me with 3 little tender spots of ongoing fire. Part of the mastoid bone was removed. The cerebral sinus the tumor had invaded was removed. My skull is held in place with titanium clamps. My eyes are extremely photosensitive and somehow tied into my balance. Bright lights and loud noises make me dizzy and tippy. My balance is poor and may not get any better. The eye problems and numb skull and hearing may go away. Only time will tell. The final pathology report results received today indicate there is no malignancy. I will be monitored every 6 months by MRI and look forward to the Harpo reminiscences. When my daughter brought me home, she had this reflection to share with me. "Mom, 2 weeks ago when you told me you had a brain tumor, I went completely crazy, thinking about life without you in it. And I stayed crazy, worrying, waiting for you in surgery, waiting for you in recovery, waiting for you to be able to go home, and here we are, home." She held her hands apart, measuring, and asked, "What was that? 2 weeks, it's gone. Where did it go?" What was the point of all that worry? I reminded her of when she was very young and liked to think about infinity and how it made her feel giddy. I suggested that she try to look at that piece of now gone time in the same way. She looked at infinity when she was too young to attach concepts to it. Just look at it as a whole, I told her. Try not to think about it much, and maybe something new will suggest itself to you. The rain this morning left a distinct promise of fall. A few baby pink roses remain in the backyard, and they shine whenever the sun comes out. So here we are. We're not in the ER this morning. We're sitting right here where we are. And we have no idea what's going to happen today. I have a schedule. My calendar, it's a busy day for me today, according to all those little blocks in my calendar. But will I wind up doing all those things? I have no idea. The only thing of which we can be certain is what's happening right here. So let's land right here. There is a body. Somebody sits here. And there's some very distinct experiences. One is pressure, where the body presses against the chair, the cushion, the floor. There's life in the hands, what we call the hands. Perhaps there's hearing, certainly the hearing of this voice. Here where I am, there's that pointillist sound of rain on the roof. Rain on the roof, what a comforting, familiar old sound. And there's breathing. "2,600 years ago, the Buddha proposed, take a comfortable upright posture, placing mindfulness before you. Abandoning covetousness and grief concerning the world. Become aware of in-breathing and out-breathing. Become aware also of the life throughout the body, the feet and legs and hands and back. The face. And awakening to the reality of in-breathing and out-breathing, which requires no thinking at all. We attend to the body door, sensations, to the ear door, to the sounds, and the mind door where thoughts appear. The thoughts may be of the past or the future. They may be just random thoughts. They take the form of wanting, desiring, telling stories about something desirable, or the opposite, something unpleasant, something that less is wanted of. Or there could be restlessness and agitation, worry, or sleepy dullness, sloth and torpor. Or there could be doubt. And it behooves us to become very clear about these phenomena that occur. There's almost always a mood, not so much thought, but just a tone, a coloration of consciousness. None of these are personal. We don't need to fight with them. We just observe how they arise and pass away. And we can come home to breathing. To this breath now, not some fantasy breath. To these sensations now. Each breath has its beginning. It has a birth in a way. It appears out of nowhere. There is then the expansion phase, the contraction, and the vanishing. Mindfulness can be aware of the quality of mind, of consciousness that's present. This could be one of those times when everything's crisp and clear. It's like waking up on a cold, clear winter morning when you look outside and everything is completely sharp-edged, and when a thought appears, it comes in like a shout in an empty barn. The truth of impermanence shining forth in sharp relief. Obvious that at the end of the breath is over. Or we could discover the mind in a sense, sort of blurry fog. Pretty forgetful, doesn't really remember what it's doing. It's not that either is better or worse. It's that they simply are different. And that which knows them can be clear, even in blurriness. One can know blurriness. Very low concentration, mind flitting here and there. Awakening in this moment to whatever's happening. Coming home to the present moment, exactly here and now. May all beings everywhere share in the merits of our practice. May all beings be free from suffering of all kinds. May all of our relations of the air, the earth, and the waters remember their true great nature. Well, that was sort of funny. About 5 minutes before the gong, a really brilliant piece of guidance came up. I was very impressed with it. and then it was completely on mute. How funny. I imagine, in quite some depth, I had us imagine something we were going to do today, and to do it with great mindfulness. And the guidance was impeccable. And the mute button was on. I muted so I could have a little coughing fit and forgot to put it on. Anyway, be mindful. I love it when things like that happen. Especially when it was like, this is really clear. Oh, yeah, this is good. So I have an announcement, which is that this Sunday is the first Sunday of the month. And Kendall Summers will be teaching from 6:30 till 8, I think it is, on Sunday night. And if you've not joined her, I highly recommend it. Kendall is a person of great experience and incredible heart and wisdom. So it's the first and third Sundays of the month. And Jim, is there anything else we should be mentioning?
No, I can't think of anything.
Thank you. So, what is what's happening for you?
Robert, this is Had.
Hello, Had.
I'm curious how the woman is who had the brain tumor that you opened with.
I haven't heard from Jewel in 20 years. Might be, maybe I'm going to make a note to myself to see if I can contact her. That'd be fun. Yeah, I'll make a note. If you say you're going to make a note.
And one other thing, I'm thinking about a handful of experiences I have in meditation that are priceless and precious and wonderful, and wow, this is really it. And most of the time it's not that. And as you know, I lead a meditation with a group of people that have gotten brain injury in their lives, and I want to offer those jewels as you'll get this if you meditate, because I so love it when that happens. But also, I'm really getting that's not it, because
they're gone.
That's something that does happen, the 7 factors or the concentration, or maybe concentration is my main one that I love. And I want to know what I can promise. I mean, because I'm seeing that's nice when that occurs, but it's not even why to do the practice. Mm-hmm. That's just part of the phenomenon of having a mind and a life. Did I ask you a question there?
What can you promise? And I very little. But I think actually that's not true. That's a kind of snappy
Yeah.
answer. But what can you promise? Well, I think you can promise that it doesn't take much practice to become more awake, and that it becomes possible to observe the mind more objectively, and that it becomes possible to observe emotions and to then become more capable of interrupting the craziness when it's happening. I think you can promise that, and people can learn how to relax more. I mean that I believe. Actually, I've said many times, if you were to undertake this practice and do it for 20 minutes a day for a month, I say things like, you will notice a difference. Something will be different for you. And if you do it for 2 months, someone around you will notice, and they'll say, you're different. What's different about you? You're not so irritable, or it's a huge intervention in consciousness in our lives. I'm going to mute you, Jim. Computer noise coming through.
Robert, are you out there? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Pamela. Are you in there?
I am. I wanted to check in. A few weeks ago, I was in kind of a bad place, and I was having trouble with self-forgiveness. And everyone was very supportive, and there were a couple of books recommended. And I got both of them, and one of them has just been so beneficial. And it's the first one, actually, I started reading. And so I just wanted to share it. Maybe it'll help somebody else today. It's called Taming Your Gremlin. And it's by a therapist who's based in Texas. And so very much of it just fits right in with what we do here every day. He talks about your spotlight of awareness. I like that term. And he talks about, he kind of makes your, the storms that emerge, kind of that are just like combinations of your thoughts and your emotions that kind of ravage you for a while before they go away. And he kind of turns those into like gremlin little creatures that helps you to kind of be a little apart from them, It's just been very useful. And I just thought for self-forgiveness and some of the imagery might be helpful to somebody else. So it's called Taming Your Gremlin. It's by Rick Carson. And it's really easy to read, and I'm just getting a lot of benefit from it. That's all.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You became sort of poetic when you were talking about it, so it obviously is touching you deeply. Yeah. Nice. Taming Your Gremlin.
Good morning, Robert. It's Joe.
Hello, Joe. For you. Where are you?
There have been times there have been times in my life when I've had overpowering, world-stopping insight, but I was alone and there was no one to share it with. And I asked once about that with someone that I respected, and they said, perhaps it's because that insight was just for you. So maybe the mute button being on was that the insight was just for you.
I accept. I was very moved by the guidance.
I can relate to that.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Funny, that brings up a schizoid association. I once knew a person fairly well who was working on a book that had a lot of research in it, and she did not back up her work. And she lost 6 months of work. So if you're a person who is dependent upon your computer and the amassing of work. The advice is you have at least 3 backups. There's one which is on site, and there's one which is off site, and then a duplicate one on site. I don't do the duplicate on site, but all my information is backed up in 3 places, and 2 of them are not here in my little house. They're up in the cloud somewhere. So the question is not when is the computer going to crash. The question is not if, it's when. So that's my little public service announcement.
I'm sorry, Robert. One more thing. Is there a tentative date for the open house of the center yet?
It's very tentative. It's Gregory and I were talking yesterday, and it's I'm hesitant to say it. It's probably January. The expected completion date for PNC construction is December 15th. But then beyond that, we have to get the whole place back together. There will be work parties for sure in December. Be opportunities to be there.
I'm planning a trip, and it happens to coincide with the second and third week of December. And coming to the open house is something I really want to do. So I want to try, if I can, arrange it in such a way that I don't miss out.
January. I really think it'll be January before we actually have an opening.
I think with my experience in construction, that's probably realistic with the way things are looking. And if our completion date is mid-December, there's probably a few weeks of work left before it's all ready, cleaned up and ready to open the doors.
The way that PNC is performing, my guess is they will be out on schedule. But then there's a humongous amount that will be left for us to do.
All right. Thank you.
I'm going over today, and I'm told that yesterday and the day before, the decking went down on the ramps. So it will really look like there are ramps in the backyard, and so on. So
okay.
All the offices, they're putting sheetrock back in the perimeter of the entire building from downstairs. All the 3 feet of sheetrock were taken off so that they could put these fasteners in to tie the building to its foundation. And that's all. The other day when I was there, that's all that sheetrock's up, and mudding and taping is going on with that. And the painting is done in the living room. The carpeting is coming in on Monday and Tuesday of next week. And after that, all we need is electrical. And so the living room will definitely be ready. But it's at quite a crescendo now. They're really doing quite a thing. Very impressive. Oh, and I want to sing his praises. Pete, oh, what's his last name? I forget. The superintendent for PNC, who's on site. We had a meeting last week. Some of you probably saw the email I sent out. We had a meeting, and the play structure was in the way. And so I sent, it was kind of tense in the meeting, and it turned out that it really was up to PIMC to move it. And PNC agreed, well, we could move it, but there would be a charge. We'd have to charge $600 or $800 to move that. So I sighed and came home, and I wrote an email to the community and said, will people join me on Saturday afternoon? And then an email came through from Pete. He said, don't worry about the play structure. I moved it. He just did it. And that's happened again and again with this construction company. They've been so thoughtful and generous, and actually across the board. Kim Knox, our project manager par excellence, has donated huge amounts of her time, and the same has been true with Jacob Balderas and Don Titus. Everyone's really chipped in a lot. It's quite exciting. Lots of generosity flowing. So, Anybody else have anything you'd like to share on this here rainy Friday morning?
Hi, Robert, it's Eileen, and
Hello,
everyone.
Eileen.
I have a question. I have been listening to the audiobook, what the Buddha taught, and which is wonderful. I went ahead because I didn't realize the chapter said.
Please go ahead. Read the whole book.
Yeah. Well, in any case, my question that I didn't hear the answer to, and therefore it may not be relevant, is there consciousness? I understand that for every object, there is a consciousness for the mind, for hearing, etc. So my question is, if somebody is in a coma, is there consciousness? We know that in sleep there is consciousness because some people have been able to do that dreaming stuff. Forgot what you call it. But is there consciousness when there's no object of consciousness? I know there, yeah.
Those are
That's
two
my
really
question.
different questions, I think. Is there consciousness when there's no object? And the Buddhist teachings would say no, that consciousness and the object arise together. And there's not someone who's observing that. Whether there's consciousness in coma or not, I think, I haven't seen that the teachings speak to that. However, there sure are a lot of people who have, after the fact, reported stuff that was going on around them, or when they were under general anesthesia, that they heard everything that happened in the operating room. So, who knows? I guess
That's what that's the conclusion I came to, that nobody's, because when somebody's under anesthesia, they're not in a coma. So I just wanted to check if somebody knew. I just always wonder about things. And
I have to go to don't know mind. I don't know. And even if it's said in a book that we did, I wouldn't know that. That would be somebody's opinion in a book. Though I do have this practice, which is when in the presence of someone who is apparently unconscious, presume they're hearing and smelling and tasting and they're feeling everything that happens around them. So being in the room with someone who's dying, for instance, or who's in a coma, that if you're going to move them, if you're going to reach over and touch their hand, tell them you're going to reach over and touch their hand. And I noticed when I was in the hospital myself, some nurses are really good at that. This is what they're predicting. This is what I'm going to do. So they're not startling one. And some of the others were not so skillful with that. But to presume that the person is hearing everything. And that also is useful sometimes, that one can be in the presence in a context where a person is apparently unconscious, that you don't need to be talking out loud to talk to them. You can do it inside your mind. Does that result in communication? I don't know. But it sure feels good to do sometimes. I've been in circumstances where someone was semi-conscious or unconscious in bed, and the family was around and very agitated, and it wasn't my place to intervene with the family, but I could just sit there or stand there or whatever and have maybe a hand on the person's hand and just breathe consciously and be aware and be comforting as best I could. So that's not an answer to your question, but it's been guidance for me sometimes when I've been in circumstances that...
it is an answer.
Oh, good.
It is a good answer. And I just have something to report. What I've noticed in the last 6 months is that when I'm wondering about anything, why somebody didn't call or anything that would probably not be positive, because if it were positive, I wouldn't wonder about it. What I'm finding is that instead of having to go through the psychological process of reasoning, I just go immediately now to, that's a story I don't know. And I think
Wow.
that's come out of this every day. So, and
That's a
listening to
lot.
everybody else share. So yeah, it's a relief.
Right.
Give me some time.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Robert, I just want to make sure you don't miss Janet's comment in the chat.
Oh, I would miss it for sure. Thank you. What was the comment? Here, let me go look. I don't track the chat. I can't. Janet's comment. Robert, you bring out the best in people. You connect and appreciate. No surprise your contractors are being super helpful. Well, we're having a good time.
Okay, and the attribution is it's from Tim.
Oh, it's from Tim. Oh, great. Oh, there's Tim. Hello, Tim. And there's Janet. That looks funny. Janet, your hand around Tim's shoulder with the perspective of the camera, it looks like you have an arm. Oh, there. It looks like your arm is 10 feet long, reaching around the shoulder. It's funny. Well, anybody sitting with something, I need to go a little bit timely fashion this morning to get to my appointment. I could getting older results in meeting lots of young medical people. Yesterday, I met a young fellow. He's probably 40, maybe. I met a fellow. He's a hand surgeon, and I finally decided to do something about my carpal tunnel, my numb fingers. And so I had some testing done, and lo and behold, moderate to severe carpal tunnel problems. Surprise! And so I went to see this surgeon guy just to see what he's going to say, and what he said was, well, we certainly wouldn't do surgery, but first thing we're going to do, that we will do if you're willing, is we'll shoot some steroid into your wrists and see what happens with that over 2 months and see if, in fact, and then he described all the possibilities and so on. And then he got out this needle about this long and he sat across from me, and without any local anesthetic or anything, he stabbed that needle into my wrist here, and holy bejeebies, it hurt. God. And then he moved it around to be sure he got it in all the right places. And I was flinching, and then my entire hand, not my whole exact, but all my fingers went like catastrophically numb. I was driving the car like this is very weird. And today they're better, actually. There's much less numbness than there's been. So I'll see whether in the long run I wind up doing the surgery. So that, and today's the dermatologist, the once every 6 or 10 months. So it's amazing how much maintenance there is. Geez, it's hard to have a life. And that's with a healthy body. So to any of them being very lighthearted about it, but there's a lot that we need to do to keep ourselves functional as we age. Of course, 45 minutes a day of exercise and yoga, right? And then there's flossing, and it's absurd. So, anybody else want to say something? Anyone want to complain about old age and decay? You're too young to complain, David. You're not allowed. Every time Robert says floss, I got the chat open here. I imagine him doing the dance. The dance? I'm missing it.
There's a dance move that the kids do that's called flossing.
Oh, I see. But let's go out on a song. May all beings be happy. May all beings receive all blessings. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. See you Sunday, perhaps at 10 o'clock, or once again at 7 on Monday. Buddha willing and the creek don't rise. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Happy, mindful, heart-infused living, dear friends. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Buddha. It's Friday.
Yay. Yay. Bye-bye, everyone.
Goodbye. Oh, my goodness.